This match will determine once and for all which nation is the greatest on Earth, Mexico or Portugal.
Can we go, Dad? Please, Dad, please, Dad, can we go? Can we go, huh, please?
Yes, oh God, yes!
For more than 30 years, The Simpsons has built a strange kind of reputation. It isn't just a cartoon about a yellow family in a fictional town anymore. To millions of fans, it has become something closer to an oracle, a show that keeps dropping jokes that later line up with real headlines. Smartwatches, autocorrect, a certain billionaire's rocket company, even a president or two. Every time one of these moments resurfaces, the internet goes through the same cycle. Disbelief, screenshots, arguments in the comments, and then a wave of new viewers going back to watch the original scene for themselves. Now, with the 2026 FIFA World Cup underway across the United States, Mexico, and Canada, one old episode has been dragged back into the spotlight harder than almost any other. Fans are convinced the show hinted at this exact tournament nearly 30 years ago. So we're going to walk through the evidence, the coincidences, and the reality behind the biggest Simpsons predictions people are talking about right now, starting with the one that started this whole obsession in the first place. Back in 1997, The Simpsons aired a quick, throwaway gag that almost nobody noticed at the time. In the scene, the family is watching television when a commercial interrupts, hyping up a soccer match billed as nothing less than a contest to decide the greatest nation on Earth. The two teams shown facing off were Mexico and Portugal. At the time, it read as a random punchline, two countries that had no obvious reason to be paired together in a fictional biggest match ever. 4 years, that's all it was, a blink and you miss a joke buried in a random episode. Then the internet got involved. Fans rediscovered the clip ahead of the 2022 World Cup and ran with it. Since Mexico had qualified, Portugal had qualified, and Cristiano Ronaldo was still chasing the one trophy that had eluded him his entire career. The pieces looked like they might fit. They didn't. Mexico failed to escape the group stage, and Portugal fell in the quarterfinals. The theory went quiet again, but it never fully disappeared, because the cartoon never attached a year to the joke. As long as Mexico and Portugal hadn't actually met in a final, believers argued the door was still open. That's exactly why 2026 reignited the whole conversation. This time, Mexico wasn't just another participant. It was a co-host nation, playing in front of massive home crowds in Mexico City and Guadalajara, cities that sit thousands of feet above sea level, which can genuinely wear down visiting teams late in matches. The tournament itself had also changed shape. For the first time in history, the World Cup expanded to 48 teams split into 12 groups, with an extra knockout round added to the bracket. That restructuring opened up far more paths for unlikely matchups than any previous tournament, and fans immediately started plotting out scenarios where Mexico and Portugal could theoretically collide in the final at New Jersey's MetLife Area Stadium on July 19th. For a while, the dream stayed alive. Mexico topped their group with 3 straight wins and knocked out Ecuador in the round of 32, giving the co-hosts something to build on after decades of World Cup heartbreak. Mexico had been eliminated at the same early stage, tournament after tournament, 4 years. Portugal, leaning on Ronaldo along with a talented supporting cast, ground out results of their own. But football has a habit of ignoring scripts written by cartoonists. In the round of 16, Mexico's run ended in a tight, emotional loss on home soil, and Portugal was eliminated in the very same round days later. Just like that, the 1997 prophecy missed again, for the second tournament in a row. And yet, oddly, that hasn't killed the theory online. If anything, fans have simply shifted the conversation toward the darker part of the same scene, since the cartoon didn't show a triumphant final. It showed the match collapsing into chaos and disorder, something a segment of viewers have tried tying to real-world tensions well beyond the sport itself. Whether or not that reading holds up, it shows just how far people are willing to stretch a 15-second gag from nearly 30 years ago. If the World Cup joke is the reason casual fans know about Simpsons predictions, the political ones are the reason people take the show seriously at all. The most famous example comes from an episode that aired in March of 2000, where Lisa Simpson is shown as President of the United States, dealing with a rough economy she inherited. In passing, she mentions cleaning up a budget mess left behind by a previous administration, one led by a President Trump. At the time, this landed as pure absurdity. Donald Trump was a fixture in pop culture, known for real estate deals, tabloid headlines, and a personality built for television, not for the Oval Office. He had floated a presidential run around 1999 through the Reform Party, so the idea wasn't invented from nothing, but almost no one treated it as realistic. The writers were essentially poking fun at how fame was starting to blur into political influence, pushing that idea to its most extreme, cartoonish conclusion. 16 years later, that joke stopped being one. Trump entered the 2016 presidential race, and what many assumed would be a short-lived publicity run instead turned into a campaign that outlasted a long list of experienced politicians. When he won the election and became the 45th president, the old clip resurfaced almost instantly, and it hit differently this time. A line that once sounded like the show reaching for the most unbelievable premise it could find now looked eerily specific. That same episode produced a second wave of speculation years later. Lisa's presidential wardrobe in the cartoon included a purple pantsuit and her usual pearl necklace. When Kamala Harris appeared at a 2021 presidential inauguration wearing a purple outfit with pearls, viewers immediately pulled the two images side by side. According to longtime Simpsons writer Mike Scully, the explanation is far less mysterious than fans want it to be. The pantsuit was likely meant to evoke a generic image of a powerful political figure, possibly inspired by the style associated with Hillary Clinton, while the purple color may have simply been an animator's random choice. The pearls were even easier to explain, since Lisa has worn that exact necklace as part of her design since the show began. Mundane explanation or not, the coincidence was strong enough to become permanent fuel for the theory. The same 1997 episode that gave fans the Mexico-Portugal joke also buried a smaller detail that turned out to be far more unsettling. In that scene, Brazil and Germany are shown facing off, with Germany winning 2-0. On its own, that's an unremarkable result. Two of the strongest footballing nations in history, with a scoreline that wouldn't raise eyebrows in any era. Then came the real 2014 World Cup, hosted in Brazil. In the semifinal, playing at home, with the entire country expecting a run toward the trophy, Brazil collapsed against Germany in a way nobody could have predicted. Missing their two biggest players to injury and suspension, Brazil fell behind early and then completely unraveled, conceding 4 goals in a span of just a few minutes. By the end of the night, the score sat at 7-1, one of the most shocking results in the tournament's history, and stadium cameras captured fans in tears, staring blankly at the pitch. The cartoon hadn't predicted the exact score, but it had predicted the exact outcome, Germany beating Brazil, years before anyone would have guessed that matchup would carry that kind of weight. Long before any of this, The Simpsons had already built a smaller but consistent track record with American football. Around the time of Super Bowl 26, an episode had Lisa confidently predicting a Washington team to win, and the real game played out the same way. Instead of letting it go, the writers leaned into it, redubbing portions of the same episode in following years with new team names for each new matchup. More than once, the redubbed prediction matched the real outcome, including a Super Bowl 29 pick that correctly favored a San Francisco team. None of this proves anything on its own. Sports predictions get made constantly, and some are bound to land, but stacked next to the political and World Cup coincidences, it added another data point to a growing pattern fans couldn't stop noticing. Not every prediction involves sports or politics. In a 1998 episode, Homer gets briefly pulled into the Hollywood spotlight, and during a quick scene set on a studio lot, a sign in the background casually lists a major film studio as a division of a massive entertainment company that, at the time, seemed like a completely different kind of business altogether. It read as a throwaway gag mocking how absurd a corporate merger like that would be, especially since the two companies had very different reputations. One built around family-friendly branding, the other known for being edgier and more willing to satirize everything around it. 2 decades later, that impossible joke became a real headline when one of the largest entertainment mergers in history actually went through, folding major film and television assets into that same family-friendly giant's portfolio. The deal was worth tens of billions of dollars and reshaped the entertainment industry. What had once been an exaggerated punchline turned into an accurate description of exactly what happened. Some of the eeriest comparisons fans make aren't really predictions in the traditional sense. They're just uncomfortable parallels. In one episode, Homer joins a man who might be his long-lost father on an underwater expedition, searching for treasure inside a sunken ship using small submersibles. During the dive, Homer becomes trapped, his oxygen supply dwindles, and he loses consciousness before waking up safely in a hospital days later. In 2023, a real submersible expedition to view the wreck of the Titanic ended in tragedy when the vessel suffered a catastrophic failure, and everyone aboard was lost. The two stories share obvious surface details: small submersibles, deep-sea exploration, a loss of contact that sparked global concern, even though the outcomes couldn't have been more different. Fans weren't necessarily claiming the show predicted the tragedy itself, but the resemblance was enough to send people digging through old episodes again, looking for connections that might not really be there. Finally, there's Blinky, maybe the most recognizable Simpsons prediction of all, even if it barely qualifies as one. Blinky is a three-eyed fish that lives near Springfield's nuclear plant, introduced as a piece of environmental satire about pollution and radiation. For years, he stayed exactly what he was meant to be, a cartoon punchline referenced whenever real conversations about nuclear safety came up. Then, in 2011, fishermen in Argentina caught a wolf fish with what appeared to be three eyes, reportedly pulled from waters connected to a reservoir near a nuclear facility. Photos spread instantly, and the comparisons to Blinky were immediate and impossible to avoid. Nobody seriously argued the show had predicted a specific fish showing up 14 years later, but the coincidence was strange enough that it became one more entry on an already long list. It's worth asking why The Simpsons specifically gets this treatment, when plenty of other long-running shows have also produced strange, coincidental moments over the decades. Part of the answer is simply math. A show that has been on the air since 1989, releasing dozens of episodes a year, has thrown an enormous number of jokes at the wall about future technology, future politics, and future headlines. Statistically, some of those jokes were always going to land close to reality eventually, purely by volume. But there's also something about the show's format that makes it feel different. The Simpsons has never really been a science fiction show trying to guess the future on purpose. Its predictions, real or imagined, tend to come from writers exaggerating the culture around them for a laugh, not from any attempt at forecasting. That's arguably what makes it feel eerier when one of those exaggerations turns out to be accurate. It wasn't trying to be right, and yet it was. There's also a psychological piece to all of this. Once a person becomes convinced that a show has predicted something once, they start looking at every subsequent episode differently. Confirmation bias does a lot of heavy lifting here. Nobody circulates screenshots of the thousands of Simpsons jokes that never came true, because there's nothing to circulate. A joke about a talking dog running for mayor isn't interesting once it fails to happen. But the handful of moments that do land close to reality get shared, reshared, and turned into video essays like this one, which only reinforces the idea that the show has some kind of special insight. It's the same reason people remember the psychic who got one prediction right and forget the 100 predictions that missed. None of that is meant to dismiss how genuinely fun these coincidences are to dig through. Even knowing the boring explanation behind Lisa's purple pantsuit doesn't make the image side by side with a real inauguration any less striking. Even knowing that Brazil's 7-1 collapse wasn't literally forecast by a cartoon doesn't make rewatching that old 2-0 joke feel any less strange once you know what actually happened in 2014. The appeal of these theories isn't really about proving the writers had some kind of secret foresight. It's about the very human instinct to find patterns in chaos, especially when those patterns involve something as emotionally charged as a home nation's World Cup hopes or a shocking historical result. Taken individually, almost every one of these moments has a reasonable, boring explanation. Writers make jokes about extreme scenarios because extreme scenarios are funny. Sports predictions get redubbed and occasionally get lucky. Corporate satire sometimes turns out to be less exaggerated than it seemed at the time. And with a show that has produced well over 700 episodes, the sheer volume alone means some jokes were always going to brush up against reality eventually. But taken together, it's easy to understand why so many people can't quite shake the feeling that something more is going on. As for the World Cup theory specifically, the one that kicked off this entire wave of renewed interest, 2026 has already delivered its answer. Both Mexico and Portugal were eliminated in the round of 16, meaning the greatest nation on Earth, final from 1997, stayed exactly where it's always been, a joke without a punchline that ever quite lands. Maybe that's the real pattern here. Not that The Simpsons sees the future, but that fans keep finding new reasons to believe it might, one uncanny coincidence at a time. What do you think? Coincidence? Or is there something else going on? Let us know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this breakdown, stick around for more.